The ultimate purpose of the form and processing script that we're building is to send the content of the feedback form by email. Unfortunately, online forms are a target for malicious attacks, and the most common type of attack is known as email header injection. This attempts to trick your form into sending HTML email with copies to a large number of people. Let's create a function to block such attacks. I'm going to add the new script in the external file process_mail.php, and I want to start right at the top of the script, so I'm going to add in some extra space before the for each loop. I'm going to begin by assuming that nothing is suspect, so create a variable called suspect and set its value to the Boolean false. So because it's a keyword, don't put any quotes around that. Then we need a pattern to look for typical email headers that are used by attackers. So we'll create a variable to store that, pattern, and I'm going to use what's known as a Perl compatible regular expression. So it needs to be in a string, begin with a delimiter, which is normally a /, then what we're looking for, content hyphen type followed by a colon, and in Perl compatible regular expressions a vertical pipe means or. So or bcc colon or cc colon, then a closing slash as a delimiter and a lowercase I. That lowercase I makes it a case insensitive search. Perl compatible regular expressions can be very complicated. This is a very simple one. All it's doing is it's looking for content type followed by a colon, or bcc followed by a colon, or cc followed by a colon. But you can create really powerful regular expressions to match patterns such as a phone number or zip code rather than literal text. To find out more about this fascinating and important subject, check out Using Regular Expressions with Kevin Skoglund here on the lynda.com online training library. But let's carry on with our own script. We need to define a function now, so the function keyword. I'll call the function is suspect, and it will take 3 arguments. The first one will be value, the second one will be pattern, and the third argument I want to pass by reference, so we need to precede it with an ampersand, and it will be suspect. This function will be used to inspect the post array, so inside the curly braces we need a conditional statement that checks whether value is an array. So if, then we use the isArray function and pass it our argument value. If it is, we need a for each loop to go through that array. We'll call each element item. What I'm creating is what's known as a recursive function. A recursive function keeps on calling itself inside a loop until it's dealt with all the items it needs to deal with. So we're going to call the isSuspect function inside here, and the first argument we'll pass to it will be the current array element, in other words item, then the pattern, and then suspect. And because we're calling the function here on line 8, suspect must not be preceded by an ampersand. It's only here in the original definition of the function, when we're passing it by reference, that you have the ampersand. So eventually the first argument that's passed to isSuspect will no longer be an array, so we'll have something that we can actually deal with. We'll deal with that beginning on line 10 in an else block. And we're looking for a match against a Perl compatible regular expression. So if, and we use the preg match function that matches against the regular expression. The first argument is the regular expression, so that's called pattern in our case. And the second argument is the string that you want to match against that pattern. So in this case it will be value. Preg match returns true if it finds a match. If it does, we want to change suspect to the Boolean true. That completes the function definition. So now let's use it. So I'm going to add some extra space here after the function definition, and we'll call isSuspect. And the first argument that I'm going to pass to it is the post array. And then the second one will be the pattern that we have defined. And the third one is the suspect variable that was set on line 2 to false. And this will go through the post array, and if it finds any suspect phrases that are in that pattern, suspect will automatically be converted to true. So we want to prevent the rest of the script from running if it is true. So if we've found an attack, we want to stop it, but if there is no attack, we want to continue. So a conditional statement, if, then the logical not operator, which is an exclamation mark, and suspect. And then we'll use the alternative syntax for conditional statement, so colon there, and then after the for each loop we need to have end if and a semicolon. And let's just indent everything so it's a little bit easier to see. So here on line 19 we're using the logical not operator, which reverses a Boolean value. So if suspect remains false, that means we haven't found any suspect phrases in the post array, and not suspect will be true. So that will allow the processing script to continue. But if we have found any suspect phrases, the processing script will not continue. And if that happens, we need to display an error message in the main form. So let's go back to contact.php. And after the heading 1 on line 19, we need to insert a new line and a PHP block. And inside there, we need a conditional statement. We need to check if the post array has got any values. In other words, the form has been submitted. If it has, and suspect is true, we'll need to display a new message. So HTML paragraph with the class warning, and sorry, your mail couldn't be sent. I prefer to use a neutral message because I don't think there's any value in antagonizing attackers or spammers. And then we need to change this if on line 22 to else if. So if we save that and then test it in a browser, in name I'm going to put BCC followed by a colon and click send. Sorry, your mail couldn't be sent. So that is working fine. Let's just try it with my name and then send comments. Please fix the items indicated, and my name is still being preserved. So the processing script now blocks suspect phrases entered into the form fields. We're rapidly approaching the stage when the contact form will be ready to send the user input by email.